Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending this event on ranked choice voting presented by Fairvote Washington and brought to you by ASWSU Issues and Forums Committee. The United States is the oldest constitutional democracy in the world, but our government is really struggling right now. We're dealing with a pandemic, record unemployment, homelessness, and more. Our leaders and representatives are mired in gridlock and dysfunction. Ranked choice voting is a growing movement with the potential to dismantle some of the roadblocks to a healthier political system. Fairvote Washington is a nonpartisan, nonprofit, volunteer-driven champion of electoral reforms like ranked choice voting that give voters greater choice, a stronger voice, and a more civil, representative democracy that works for all Americans. Our presenters and Fairvote Washington representatives this evening are Kit Millman, Lisa Aralt, Aaron Eldridge, and Alejandro Peralta. So sorry if I've messed anyone's name up. Kit lives in Bellingham and coordinates Ranked Choice Voting 101 presentations. Lisa lives in Seattle and is the director of Fairvote Washington. Erin lives in Olympia, where she works as a student support specialist for elementary age students. When she isn't phone baking and volunteering with the legislative team of Fairvote Washington, she is also advocating for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI Washington, and spending as much time as she can outside. Alejandro is from Tacoma, Washington, and attended Tacoma Community College. He is now studying computer science at Michigan State University and also, through the magic of Zoom, at the Imperial College in London. Alejandro recently joined Fairvote Washington and started the new Pierce County chapter.
Beautiful. Thank you for that introduction. I love it. If you want to go ahead, actually, we will start presenting the Zoom, and I will give you a quick introduction as to why I decided to actually join ranked choice voting and pursue it as a solution. So again, thank you for the introduction. My name is Alejandro Peralta, and I'm a volunteer, Fairvote Washington, and a chapter lead for Pierce County. And the honest reason why I joined for Fairvote Washington and help get ranked choice voting into our democracy is because you can see the flag in the background. I am an American and I love this country. Sadly, it seems as though our country has been too stagnant with its promise and its vision. And I don't have to remind any of you watching right now, but the world is changing so fast. And for some reason, it seems that our democracy can't keep up with the sense of how quickly the world is changing, right? And again, I don't have to remind you, but the future is coming, right? Self-driving cars, delivery drones, vertical farms, 3D printed houses. New York City actually has a 3D printed house for sale right now. So the innovation that we live is something that is missing in our democracy, right? And this is why I decided to try and get ranked choice voting enacted, because we need to try and make sense of the world, and our democracy is supposed to do just that.
Yeah, ditto that, Alejandro. That was awesome. And yeah, I'm Erin. I live in Olympia. So I'm the legislative and outreach volunteer for my local chapter in Thurston County. And I became involved with Fairvote Washington and learned about ranked choice voting actually through a podcast. I was living in Armenia because I was doing Peace Corps Armenia a few years ago. And Tweak the Vote by Radiolab, one of my favorite podcasts, came out with a whole episode about how ranked choice voting is used in Ireland. And I was just making my dinner, like listening to this podcast. And I just realized, like, wow, this seems so simple and such an easy solution to solving polarity in our system and getting rid of just the whole two-party system as a whole. And as somebody who grew up doing a lot of grassroots organizing, actually while I was in college in Florida, I just knew that when I moved back to the US, I was going to get involved in whichever way I could. And luckily I found Fairvote Washington. So I'm on their legislative team where I've learned a lot. Recently joined the RCV 101 team where I get to present here with you all. And yeah, I've really enjoyed my time there.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and in so many ways, Washington is already a national leader in voting and access to democracy. We've got vote by mail, automatic and same-day registration, the Washington Voting Rights Act, and more. Yet there are still ways that we still lag behind.
Yeah, our agenda for today will be number one, why implementing ranked choice voting will be important. Number two, why it is a solution. Number three, talk about the numerous benefits that come about with ranked choice voting. And fourth, its implementation and what places actually use ranked choice voting right now. And finally, what our goals are and how to bring ranked choice voting to Washington State. And as we know, our elections are good, but we all agree that they should be better and they could be better, right? And I will pose this question. If you want to answer it in the chat, I'll give 20 seconds. What improvements would you like to see in our elections? And if anybody that can read that, great. Can anybody see anything on the chat? Because it doesn't seem like there's anything.
We'll just go on.
Well, here we go. More accessible elections and less voter suppression. Nice. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, more polite campaigning. Sarah? Yeah, for sure, more polite campaigning. Give it a couple more and see if anybody else wants to ask any other questions or answer that question. So it doesn't seem like it. So yeah, we can continue. But the problems that we have now, Erin, if you'd like to start on that.
Yeah, so some of the problems that we have now with our voting system, we will start with this one. And this is our election that we had recently, if you remember it. It's the presidential primary in March about a year ago. And as you can see, there's a large field of Democrats. But in the last day or so before the election, lots of those Democrats dropped out. Some examples were Buttigieg, Warren, Klobuchar, and Yang. And just curious, you guys can think about this in your minds, is how many of you voted for a candidate that ended up dropping out after you mailed in your ballot? I know a couple of people personally.
Emma has her hand up. She did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, actually, sadly, you are not alone. Over 400,000, nearly 400,000 Washington voters voted for a candidate that actually ended up dropping out. That's 25% of the vote being null and void, and then just not being represented. But with ranked choice voting, these voters, as yourself and as many others in Washington State, your vote would still be taken into account. Without your first choice being available, they would have your backup choice as your next candidate.
And in fact, 5 other states did use ranked choice voting for this election. Those states were Alaska, Hawaii, Wyoming, Kansas, and Nevada.
Yeah, and another issue is actually called vote splitting. Vote splitting affects all parties, and it is prominent in our primaries. In this example here, during the 2016 primary for Washington State Treasurer, Republicans actually split their vote 2 ways, and Democrats split their vote 3 ways. Erin, how does this work in a top 2 primary?
So as you can see, the 2 Republicans, Davidson and Waite, got the most votes each, even though it wasn't a majority. So under our current top 2 system, they were the only 2 who advanced to the general election. Even though more than half of the voters preferred one of the 3 Democrats. So under our current system, whenever similar candidates run in the same election, they actually end up punishing and weakening each other, and they all lose. The 2 candidates who emerge from our primary can even be strongly disliked by a majority of the voters. So what happens if a third party enters the race? Well, that is called the spoiler effect. And a textbook example of this was Oregon's governor's race in 1990. Two conservative candidates ran. You have moderate Republican Frohnmeyer and far-right Mobley. Mobley ran as an independent and split the conservative vote. Now imagine being a third-party voter, but you've seen the polling. You'd probably face pressure to vote strategically for Frohnmeyer, and you're afraid of voting for the third party. Mobley is just going to hand the victory to Roberts, the one person you really don't want to win. So Alejandro, what happened?
Yes, since Roberts actually had the most votes, she won and became governor. Even though with conservatives held more than 50% of the vote. And Mobley, unfortunately, here was still a spoiler. And without Mobley in the race, Frohnmeyer would have most likely won.
So with our current system, voters feel pressure to vote for one of the two frontrunners, even if they don't like either one. And candidates feel pressure to drop out so they don't split the vote within their party. This means that third parties and independents just don't stand a chance.
So you're asking yourself, what's the solution? And most of us agree that we can do better and we should do better. So how can we accomplish some of our goals in bettering our elections process?
Well, of course, we are here today to talk about one of those ways, and that's with ranked choice voting. And it won't solve all of our problems, but it's an important first step. And please keep in mind, you guys already know how rankings work. I mean, we do this all the time. For example, if somebody in your household's going to the store and they're like, hey, I'm gonna go get you some ice cream. What do you want? And you're like, I want chocolate. And they're like, you know, chocolate was sold out last week. What do you want for your second choice? And you're like, mint chocolate chip. That's ranking. So with ranked choice voting, when there are 3 or more candidates, the voter can rank the candidates in order of preference, first choice, second choice, and so on. This picture is actually an example of a ballot. And as you can see, we have rain, snow, and hail running for positions. Sunshine was supposed to be running, but this is the Pacific Northwest and they don't live in this district because there's no sun here. But you can see that our voter ranked snow first, rain second, and hail last. If their first choice doesn't have a chance to win, they have a backup choice.
Beautiful. And now actually we're going to go through a quick ranked choice voting election, actually. The Academy Awards uses ranked choice voting to decide only one category, and that is Best Picture. So we made an election for all of you, and I will post the link in the chat here if you are so kind as to go there and make your vote here. You can decide between Moana, Alice in Wonderland, Frozen, and The Little Mermaid.
Yeah, and I love this sample because it's such an awesome example of what ranked choice voting is. So please, if you can all participate, it would be great.
So if they'll just go and open the ballot and rank their choices, and then when they're finished, close the window and come back here.
Whoa, you can also watch as votes come in and wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, I've been signed out. Let's see, I can anybody else get to this? I've been signed out.
Yeah, if you'd like, I can try and
yeah, if you'll, I'll narrate it if you'll share it.
yeah, for sure. That works well.
Yeah.
We'll give it a little more
Okay.
a little more time, and then votes are still coming in.
Yeah. This is,
It's
yeah,
kind of fun.
it's really entertaining to watch. We have 23 votes in, and I think we have close to 80 people attending tonight. And I gotta say, guys, if you want a certain one to win, you better vote because one of them right now is really taking the lead.
Okay, Alejandro, can you share
Definitely.
your screen, please?
Are we able to see that right there?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Wow. So look at that. So in a ranked choice election, the a candidate needs to get over 50% to win. And that's over here, that green line. And so this election is over. Because if someone gets over 50% on the first run, then you don't have to go any further. And if they hadn't gotten over 50%, then the next thing we would do is look at for the lowest ranking candidate, which would be Alice in Wonderland, and eliminate that candidate. So if you were all standing in a line with your favorite movie, the people in the Alice in Wonderland line, Alice was their first choice, then they would walk over to the second choice, the line of their second choice. So that's how we would do it. Alejandro, click that little purple arrow and see if what this app does.
Doesn't even let me go
the arrow. See if we go to round 2. See if it'll give us a round 2. No,
it's not.
No, it's over. Okay. That's the first time we've ever had that. Wow, you all like Moana. That's great. Okay, we'll get back to our slideshow.
Yeah, that's funny.
Okay. Let's see. Present.
Yeah, so we saw kind of how ranked choice voting works, but we know that it can solve vote splitting, the spoiler effect, and help not waste anyone's votes. How does that make our elections better, Erin?
Well, the major benefit of ranked choice voting is that it gives voters a stronger voice and more choices. So, for example, in places that use ranked choice voting, we see more women, minorities, third parties, and independents running in elections without fear of being spoilers. Voters also have more real choices because they can vote for their favorite candidate, knowing they have a backup choice. And this photo here is a photo of the Minneapolis mayoral candidates back in 2017. Minneapolis has been using ranked choice voting since 2009. And as you can see, this is an incredibly diverse group of individuals up there running for election. So there's a bunch of choices, and a lot of people were able to share their voice and their opinions on how they could make Minneapolis a better place. And so, yeah, exit polls in Minneapolis have also shown that voters overwhelmingly like it.
Nice. And then I think that actually answers one of the questions that Bryce had, which is making elections more accessible and less voter suppression as well. And Sarah, to answer yours, that you want more polite campaigning, we actually have here that it is a more civil issued focused campaign. So ranked choice voting promotes civil and issue-oriented campaigning. The candidates in these pictures actually here, the Maine's governor race in 2018 and San Francisco mayoral race in 2018, both of these candidates are actually opponents, but they chose to campaign together and find some sort of unity. Why is this so positive, Erin?
Well, imagine you're running for an election and you're out knocking on doors, talking to voters. You come to a house with your opponent's yard sign. Normally, like today, if you live in a place that doesn't use ranked choice voting, you would just skip that house because you know that they've already made their choice. However, if this was a ranked choice election, that changes things. You realize, wait, I can still ask for this voter's second choice support. And if you want their second choice vote, it's not a good idea to sling mud at their first choice candidate. Instead, you want to be civil and talk about what you stand for and how that relates to their first choice option. So that's how you win a ranked choice election. We also know that ranked choice voting can save on election costs. Cities can combine the primary and general election. That boosts turnout and saves on taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, for example, actually, New York City right now is going to run for the first time their New York mayoral race through ranked choice voting. And that would actually allow taxpayers, if they skip a separate runoff, they would save $15 million in New York City just by doing a ranked choice voting election. Erin?
Yeah, so candidates save money too by only having to run one campaign. This helps lower barrier to entry and encourages more new candidates to run.
Nice. And actually, ranked choice voting is not brand new. Ranked choice voting is used widely in our country. All of these orange states use ranked choice voting in one form or another, with Alaska and Maine being the front runners right now by using it statewide for presidential, state, and all other sort of elections that they choose to do so. And over 20 cities use ranked choice voting, from New York City to Santa Fe, New Mexico. Erin, is it as practical as it is in theory?
Well, yeah, Alejandro, as I mentioned in Minneapolis, those exit polls were positive, and research has found that in some of these other places where ranked choice voting is used, it is also positive. So voters who have used ranked choice voting overwhelmingly want to keep it by margins of between 60 to 85%. Now, that is a huge level of agreement, especially in this day and age.
Yeah, what about colleges and universities?
Well, actually, fun fact, across the US, over 90 colleges and universities use ranked choice voting in student body elections. And also, next Tuesday, there is a webinar by the National Fairvote organization about ranked choice voting at universities. We will put the link in the chat. And panelists from colleges around the country will discuss why they made the switch to ranked choice voting and how it has shaped student elections.
Nice. We'll quickly run this video as it is a summary of kind of what we've talked about.
Politics is tearing us apart, and it's because elections aren't working for most of us. Here's why. In the US, each of us can vote for the candidate we like the most. Whenever more than two candidates are running to win one seat, it's possible for most voters to hate whoever wins. Because of the split vote, politicians can ignore the will of most voters and still win. Ranked choice voting gives you the freedom to select a backup choice to prevent that from happening. Let's say a group uses ranked choice voting to decide what to eat for dinner tonight. Each voter selects their favorite dish, but also has the option to choose backup dishes. If one food receives more than half the votes, it wins, just like in any other election. But let's get to dessert, where the competition is more fierce. What if no ice cream flavor has more than 50% of the vote? Under a normal race, vanilla would win, even though a majority of voters didn't pick it. With ranked choice voting, the flavor with the fewest votes is eliminated, and voters who chose that flavor as number one will have their votes count for their next choice. Everyone gets a say, no one wastes their vote, and the winner is the flavor that the largest number of people agreed upon. That's ranked choice voting. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. You get more voice and more choice, and that makes elections better for all of us.
I was muted. So in a minute, we will get to what's happening in Washington. But first, we would like to know if any of you guys have any questions so far at all. Please ask away.
So there's a Q&A place for questions. And questions, let's see. Y'all must have some questions. Okay.
Actually, I do have a question for you guys really quickly. What are the current roadblocks to getting ranked choice voted implemented in areas where it's not, if it is already so popular where it is in use?
That's a great question. One of the main things that we hear is that people won't understand it. And so the ways to get a ranked choice voting are through initiatives, ballot initiatives, and through legislation. And actually, out of the last 12 ballot initiatives in the last 2 years, 11 of them have passed. So it's spreading. It is spreading. But there are people also, a lot of elected officials don't really want to change the method of voting that got them in office. So they're not real motivated to change that. And then election officials are concerned about the costs and the what it would take to change over a way of voting, which is a very valid concern. And yet recently, places that have started using ranked choice voting are finding that they have no net cost, that it's actually saving money. And after they use it for a little bit, and current election machinery is very capable of doing ranked choice voting. So those objections are becoming less and less of an issue.
That's a good question, Reese. Yeah.
Mhm.
Let's just say that once everything is settled, most people don't really have any good objection for ranked choice voting.
I'll just jump in. Hi, Lisa here. Then just add that there are, I believe the count is 38 proposed pieces of legislation around the country that would bring ranked choice voting to different municipalities, different jurisdictions around the country. So it's a movement that is accelerating quite quickly.
Yeah, I think it all boils down to people being afraid of change. And I mean, when you talk about changing an election system, it sounds big and like scary, but that's why we come and do presentations, because once you learn about it, you're like, oh, this is very simple. Like, we can do this. It is simple and doable. And luckily, it's being accepted in a lot of areas.
Yeah, we're not asking people to vote online like Estonia already does since like the early 2000s, right? We're not asking for anything too innovative. It's just something that's simple and a good solution for all of us.
One more thing that people often are a little surprised to realize is that even if your jurisdiction, if your city, your town decides to start using ranked choice voting, you can still vote the same way you always have. You can just pick one. Nobody's going to make you rank them. So it just gives you another option.
Mm-hmm.
It's really not scary.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very compatible with vote by mail. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions? Anybody? It can even be about Fairvote Washington, or we might have time at the end to answer questions about that too.
Well, we have some more presentation about what we're doing in Washington, and also a little bit about a really exciting use of ranked choice voting in proportional races. So if anyone wants to put in questions while we're doing the rest of the presentation, you have time for that. So I will continue sharing.
Yeah, we'll talk about what's happening here in Washington next. So let's have a look at that. Erin?
Yeah, so this is House Bill 1156, and we will drop the link to this page in the chat. This is an awesome resource if you haven't used it yet. You can look up a bunch of bills and initiatives and anything about Washington state legislation on this website. So here you'll find all the information about House Bill 1156, which is called the Local Options Bill. And this is the third time that we've had this local options bill in the legislature. And just to give you guys kind of a brief summary about the bill, it is a completely optional thing for cities and counties to use for local elections that will just allow them to use ranked choice voting. And it's gone farther than ever before this year with strong bipartisan support. Unfortunately, we're disappointed that earlier this week, the bill didn't clear the House of Origin cutoff deadline, and it didn't make it all the way through this session. So it did not get a chance to be voted and passed to the Senate. And you might even be thinking, why do we need this bill? Why do we need an options bill? Well, state law currently actually blocks jurisdictions from even trying ranked choice voting, in spite of the fact that 20 or so states, the ones that we saw earlier that were colored orange, use ranked choice voting. Here in Washington state, we aren't using it at all because we need this local options bill just to allow local jurisdictions to try it. So again, just emphasizing this is not a mandate, it's an option. If it passes in the future, which I'll talk a little bit further about, then cities and counties can decide for themselves whether or not to implement it in their local elections. And here's kind of just a graph. One of our volunteers at Fairvote Washington made this, and it's a little infographic to show how far it's come along. And as you can see, the bill cleared major hurdles. We had numerous Democrats and 4 House Republicans vote in favor of the bill. And we had a powerhouse prime sponsor at the helm, which was freshman Representative Kristen Talley Harris. She successfully challenged the sky-high fiscal note and got it reduced. So our terrific allies at the Washington Community Alliance and the Washington for Equitable Representation Coalition made the bill their top legislative priority this year. So we were able to make it through the State Government and Tribal Relations Committee, the Appropriations Committee, and the Rules Committee. So we nearly made it to the vote. It's a very impressive run. And luckily, because we made it through all of these checkpoints in January of 2022, so that's surprisingly only 10 short months away from now, the same bill with the same 27 sponsors will carry over to resume its journey, beginning at the House Rules Committee. So we're kind of going to be starting off almost where we left off. We don't have to go all the way back to the beginning, which is huge, and the first time this bill's ever been able to make it this far. So we have 10 months to line up support to get House Bill 1156 voted quickly and out of the House and through the Senate so that we can hopefully make it law or just, the option available. So yeah, it's going to be busy, but we're very excited. It's something that I think every single volunteer at Fairvote Washington is exceptionally passionate about. So that's big news. There's also another way that ranked choice voting can get passed through, and that's through the Washington Voting Rights Act. So that's through the courts. And there's actually a really interesting court case happening here in Washington in Yakima County. It's the first court case filed under the Washington Voting Rights Act of 2018. So that's monumental. And it came about because Latino voters were asking for ranked choice voting in Yakima County to make elections more fair. And we'll go into that a little bit more.
Yeah, so in Yakima County, the Hispanic/Latino voters make up 50% of the vote. And they've actually had one non-white commissioner in 20 years. So that's not the best representation, apparently. Current system creates barriers actually for people of color, women, and other minority groups. And again, as Aaron said, this is the first test of Washington's Voting Rights Act.
Yeah, and so up to this point in the presentation today, we've talked about ranked choice voting that elects a single winner. So in races such as a governor or a mayoral race. But what happens when you have 3 or more seats to fill? Can you use ranked choice voting? Well, yeah, you totally can. And that's called proportional representation or proportional ranked choice voting. And this is a bigger subject than we can totally touch on today, but we just wanted to go over some of the benefits of it. And a few American cities already use it. For example, Cambridge, Massachusetts has been using proportional ranked choice voting since 1941 to elect their city council members. When you use proportional representation, you get this equitable result where your council reflects more accurately the views of your community. Another benefit is that it puts an end to it can put an end to gerrymandering, which is awesome and a big plus. And we also have more about this that goes in depth in an article that we're putting a link up in the chat to David Brooks' One Reform to Save America article, if you want to get more in depth. But just to give a nice little brief overview, let's look at a sample district that elects 3 seats to a council.
Yeah, here's an example. Imagine that you're voting for city council and you have to fill 3 positions. Unfortunately, your favorite candidates are all running for the same position, and that is position 1. You like Honest Holly, Decent Dan, and Janine Justice. And you are saddened by the prospect of the positions 2 and 3, especially Crooked Carl. Unfortunately, you have to vote for each one. What if this were a proportional ranked choice voting election with all 9 candidates? Mind you, they are all running for the same city council.
Well, here's what it would look like if you had all of them running together. So if all 9 candidates were running for the city council on a ranked choice ballot, you could vote for Honest Holly, Janine Justice, and Decent Dan for those seats. And all 9 candidates are on one ballot, so the top 3 get elected. With multi-winner proportional ranked choice voting, you have more choice. So the counting of these ballots can be a little bit beyond what we've been talking about today. But if you do want to learn more, there's an awesome video to learn more about how to do that. And that is CGP Gray video, Politics in the Animal Kingdom, which we will link in the chat. And it gives a really nice representation of how votes of this manner would be counted. And you might think that proportional representation is just common sense and that everybody should use it. Or you might be thinking that it's a intense idea and no one's using it. But actually, these countries in red are the only ones that are still using single winner district method, where a council is elected 1 seat at a time. So as you can see, there's not a lot of red on that map at all. The rest of the world uses a proportional approach where they elect more than one candidate in the same election.
Yes, we've learned a lot actually right now about ranked choice voting today. And if this sounds good to any of you, here are some ways to get involved to help bring ranked choice voting to Washington State. We have dozens of local chapters, which will help you connect with like-minded people. If you'd like to join one or start one in Whitman County, please get in touch with us. And in the events page of fairvotewa.org, you can also go to the book club, the legislative team, the community fund team, the letter to the editor. All those are available to you. And you can help spread the word, of course, tell your friends and family, direct them to us if they have any questions or if they're just curious. Most people like ranked choice voting. As we've said, once you understand it, it's as simple as counting to 5. If you are connected to any organizations and you think they would be interested, we are always available to present. And finally, and more importantly, thank you for your time and consideration. We'll go over to maybe answering some questions if anybody has any.
Yeah, and please pick our brains about anything. Both Alejandro and I have been involved with ranked choice voting, probably not as long as Kit and Lisa, but we've dipped our hands into a bunch of different programs within the organization. So ask us anything about anything, please.
We have a few questions written up. Do you think US federal elections could be ranked choice in the near future?
Yeah, 100%, for sure. It's too positive, and it's too positive, which is something crazy to say. People love ranked choice voting, and it makes the race, as some people had said in the beginning, makes the races a lot more friendly, and it brings some humanity to our elections process, actually, which is more than wanted nowadays.
And more than just aspirationally, we could add that there are actually 2 pieces of federal legislation already introduced in Congress that would bring ranked choice voting to the U.S. House of Representatives. One would also create those multi-winner districts, the proportional ranked choice voting that that you all were just hearing about, and the other would just would change all congressional elections for both the House and the Senate to ranked choice voting. So those 2 bills are unlikely to pass in this Congress right now, but they're gaining traction quickly, and it could well happen before you all have, maybe finished your time at WSU even. I think it's quite reasonable what Alejandro said. Totally agree with him. The reform is gaining a lot of traction right now.
Yeah, I think what's makes me feel so passionately about it is that it is something that's being done successfully in multiple areas of the world. It has a foundation to it. It's not an idea that was created just yesterday. So there's traction to it, and it's a solution to some things. And I think especially the last like 5 years or so, like just tones around any election anywhere in the US has just been so just negative. And so just what Alejandro was saying, this is such a positive solution to that. So I really think a lot of people in the US are ready for a positive change and solution. So yeah, 100%.
And
Yeah,
when we look,
we're ready for an enlightenment, and I think it's coming. Honestly, I'll be as positive as possible. Like I think it's coming, and a lot of the people here watching and participating in this are a part of that, just by being here. Honestly.
when we look at other major social changes, it often is the case. You can look back to women getting the right to vote, or gay marriage, or legalizing marijuana. There are a number of things that have happened recently. Whatever your perspective on those, whether those are good or bad in your view, when you look at the trajectory of the movement, it's often very slow, very gradual, and then it begins to take hold in states, and then often quite quickly, once it begins to take hold in states, there's a sudden tipping point, and then it becomes legally, federally, nationwide. And we're really seeing that right now with ranked choice voting. Just in the last few years, all of a sudden, as I said, 38 bills that are introduced in state legislatures right now for ranked choice voting all around the country, and 20 states using it in one way or another. Just if you go back just 5 or 6 years ago, that number was much smaller. So there's a tipping point moment happening now.
Yeah, it's exciting.
That's awesome news to hear. Will ranked choice voting benefit one party or the other?
That's one of our favorite questions. Would anybody like to take that?
Yeah, I can take it. No. I think that actually something that's really interesting, I think Maine is a perfect example of that. So some criticism of ranked choice voting from people who are not supporting it currently will say that it's more of a left-leaning phenomenon, and it benefits Democrats more. But you can see in so many other areas using it that that's just not the case. Maine just elected a very conservative member into Congress, I believe, in the most recent election through ranked choice voting. And other places have elected Democrats. Some people have elected third-party members, independents. So no, it really doesn't benefit one party over the other. And if anyone else wants to add to that.
There was actually a great article in the National Review just this morning, very conservative newspaper or a publication that is challenging the reluctance of many conservatives to embrace ranked choice voting, and really pointing out that in fact conservatives have potentially more to gain even from embracing ranked choice voting. But when we look at, for example, that spoiler effect that Aaron and Alejandro showed you in that Oregon governor's race, where when you have a third candidate enter a race, it can end up throwing the victory to the candidate who is actually the least preferred by the majority of the voters. That happens to both parties all the time. And if you look, many folks like to look at the Ralph Nader as being a spoiler in the election of that led to George W. Bush being elected, where Al Gore lost. I forget the years. And then conservatives often will look to Bill Clinton's election, that Ross Perot entered that race as a third party candidate, and very likely threw the victory to the Democrat there. So we see really an equal number of races where Democrats and Republicans are losing out because we have an outdated voting method. And there is it's very clear that ranked choice voting does not benefit one party or the other. What it does do, though, is it stirs the pot, and whichever party is firmly in charge of the power dynamics in a given area, that party stands likely to have to work harder to maintain their races will be more competitive, and they may end up sharing power more with multiple other parties. So it does change the dynamics. And so you will find in some areas ranked choice voting can become partisan. So Washington has a potential, in fact, for Democrats to say, hey, no, we're doing fine here in Washington. Thank you. We're not that interested in changing. Whereas other states, again, if Republicans have been in charge, so in Maine, it's become partisan in Maine. Republicans are against ranked choice voting and Democrats are in favor of ranked choice voting in Maine. But then you look to Utah and you see the Republicans are advancing ranked choice voting. So it doesn't benefit one party or another. It benefits voters. It gives voters a stronger voice and more choices.
That's great to hear. So our current system really seems to favor incumbents. Does ranked choice voting make incumbency advantage stronger or weaker?
Weaker.
Yeah.
Definitely makes incumbents have to work harder. Makes elections more competitive.
Could you imagine that, having to make politicians work for the people? That's insane. I don't know about that,
Yeah. And I think I started getting involved with political activism work in college. And I just remember the more I learned, the more it kind of just really rattled me that we even I knew people graduating from high school who were like, my job is to get into politics and stay in politics. But when we created, when the US came into formation and we worked on these systems of voting, the idea was that the average Joe or Joanne or whoever is going to be the one who runs for office and represents their community and does the work for their term and then heads out and then another voice comes in. And so I think that that's something really exciting that ranked choice voting can also bring, is more voices being able to get involved and saying, hey, look, I have an opinion and I want to work on this. Let's see if other people in my community support that. So it kind of goes back to, I think, the original idea of what we wanted when we started creating our election systems.
If you look right in the Washington state legislature that has been considering our bill, local options for ranked choice voting, the bill's prime sponsor is a brand new freshman legislator. And it does tend to be the case that the incumbents, the longest seated incumbents, are the most reluctant to consider our bill. Yeah. Not surprising.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, sure would be great to have people have to earn our votes. How did ranked choice voting work in the general election for president this last year?
Ooh, that's a fun one. Who wants to take that one?
Alejandro or Aaron, you have first crack at the questions.
Aaron, you got this one.
Oh, okay. I'll try my best. So I know that one state that specifically used it, Alaska, I think, oh, no, am I wrong? Yep. No, they just voted into doing that. Yeah. Yes. But yeah, if somebody else wants to speak on this, I might not.
I'll be happy to take that one quickly. So Maine is the only state that used ranked choice voting for the presidential race this last November. And that was the first time that any state has ever used ranked choice voting. So we just have a data point of one. It worked fine. And Maine is also a really interesting state with respect to presidential elections, because they do not use winner take all for presidential for choosing the electors. Washington state will assign all of our electors to whichever party wins the state. All the electors go to that one party. In Maine, they actually apportion it by congressional district. So they have one elector goes to the winner of the first congressional district, one to the winner of the second congressional district, and then two to the statewide winners to represent the two senators. But it worked just fine. No, there's no issue at all. It's easily used for presidential as well.
If you ever have the time to look up how they got ranked choice voting in Maine, it will blow your mind how hard people had to fight to just get ranked choice voting on the ballot, like get ranked choice voting enacted in Maine. So that's something, if you ever want to look that up.
There's a great video on that. I don't know if anybody can find that and put it in the chat. Yeah, it's a wonderful story. Very inspired story of activism, citizen activism.
And thank you, Lisa, for answering that question. I just want to do a quick plug for anybody here, because I know that some people are here for like credit, and some people are here out of interest. And I'm specifically a part of the legislative team of Fairvote Washington because I wanted to learn more. and be able to answer questions like this. So please don't be thinking that in order to be involved, you need to be this all-knowing, super passionate about like politics person. I find it interesting. I want to learn more. And so that's why I got involved. And I am learning every day through these presentations and wonderful people in the group.
So I've wanted to just quickly, somebody actually asked, why change our voting system now specifically? And I'd love to answer that question. Yeah, more than anything now, there's too many problems that we're seeing in the world that are 21st century problems, especially like starting with social media, the divisiveness of the internet, how people don't think that we're very well aligned. And what's amazing about ranked choice voting is that it is a consensus mechanism, right? It's a way to make sense of the world around you by literally ranking how we feel about candidates or about certain policies, certain issues. And now more than ever, since again, the world's changing so quickly, especially everybody that's in attendance, right, at the university or WSU knows how quickly it's all changing. So we definitely need to get our consensus together, and in order to do that, ranked choice voting will have to be at least a tool in our democracy that will allow that.
Yeah, and I think too, like, I think what really stands out for me is just these last two presidential elections talk about vote splitting when it comes to primaries. First round to like the back in the day when there was a ton of Republicans running for the primary position for the presidential election, and then just most recently with a bunch of Democrats running, just like we talked about in the presentation. It just really shows like we're on the swing of polarity, and we're really going towards one end where it's just a lot of negativity when you bring up any kind of politics. And just what Alejandro has continuously said, I think it just kind of brings us back to the center and just makes it more about what the majority of people want. Like, yeah, you may not get your first choice on the ballot, but you're going to get your second or third, and that is like, that's good, that's great. It's way better than the person you want versus the person you absolutely don't want. So it's, yeah, I think it's just such a prominent point in history when it comes to just the polarity, to be able to even talk about this and think about a balance again.
100%. I think people are yearning to feel united. Honestly, we want the positivity, and especially our age group, and I mean many people in this country that just want to be feel united again, feel like we're doing something great. So I think now's a better time than ever, right? Like the old saying goes, it was best to plant a tree 30 years ago. The second best time to plant one is now. So let's just get it done and move forward and solve all the problems that we really want to solve, because it's doable. Like it is very doable. If everybody here that is, participating right now in this talk, or just here watching, were want to change the world, you can do it more than anybody else.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
I was just going to say, maybe it's a good time to just remind folks, what do they want to do? What should folks do if they want to get involved?
I think one of the best places to start is to go, and maybe we can drop the link on the events page for Fairvote Washington, because you can find events all over the state that you can attend, and then a lot virtually that you can be a part of in different groups. And you can find your local chapter, and you can also do stuff like write letters to the editor. Please come and join the legislation team. It is so exciting. I love it. I mean, for example, just going through this whole process right now with House Bill 1156, we had a like groundbreaking record of volunteers and supporters go and comment on the bill. And then when we got testimony and we were able to actually present our testimony to the House of Representatives, or I think it was to the Tribal Relations Committee, we had, I think, over 1,800 people sign in as supporting the bill. And the committee members themselves were like, this is unprecedented. Like, we've never had this amount of support for something. Like, you can see your action working. Like, you can see what you're putting in actually get you the results that you want. So legislation team, and then also Ranked Choice Voting 101. And we have an educators in Washington group too that meets. Oh, and then youth. we have like a whole youth ambassador team. I haven't been to one of those meetings if anybody else wants to talk about it, that they do a lot of really cool work in the community. So, and community outreach. Go to that events page. You will find something you're interested in, and it's so easy to sign up. And everyone, of course I'm biased, but everyone's really nice. So yeah.
Great. And speaking of signing up, if you sign up with us at Fairvote Washington, that put our website there in the chat, then we can keep in touch with you. And when you sign up, then that lets us count you in. When we go and speak with legislators, we can let them know how many people in their district are in favor, and that really helps. So that's a really simple thing you can all do right away, is just sign up with us at Fairvote WA. We do not spam you, don't worry. We're practically all volunteers. We don't have enough time to write all kinds of emails, but by letting us know that you're there as supporters, it really does help.
Yeah, and the more people that we have showing support, yeah, just what Lisa said, the more we can show the legislative people and be like, hey, look, Washington wants it, let's go. And I think too, just what I wanted to say about why now again is I want to get people excited to vote again. I remember when I was doing political work in Florida, and I was registering people to vote, and so many people, no matter what their age, it really spanned from 18 on up, just said, I'm not going to vote. And I was like, why? And it's like, because it doesn't matter. It's not going to count. Like I'm voting for the person who I know is not going to win. And so just to like make people excited to vote again, I think that's something that ranked choice voting does. And it's like, what a novel idea to be excited to have the ability to vote. I mean, it's a wonderful feeling to have.
Yeah, to democratize our democracy is a crazy idea, but it's definitely needed. I'm not seeing any more questions either here. So anybody else wants to ask anything? I think
I have another one. Do you think there could be a rough transitional period to ranked choice voting? Could people be confused by their new ballot? Things like that?
You know, that's such a good question. And the great thing about being in the position Washington State is now is when we adopt ranked choice voting here, it's coming soon, whether it's next year or 2 years, we know it's coming. We are not the first. There are so many other cities and states now that are using it here. So we know a lot about how it works, and it's very smooth. We know how to do these rollouts now, how to educate voters. And one of the most interesting things, if you stop and think, who would have a really strong incentive to make sure the voters understand how to mark their ranked choice ballot? Who really cares about that? The candidates, right? The candidates want to make sure that voters understand. So places that adopt ranked choice voting for the first time, what you see is the candidates really embrace voter education. They go door to door, you know, obviously not during COVID times, but they make sure they're connecting with voters and that voters understand how to rank. And again, remember, voters can still just rank one if they want. Nobody actually has to change the way they vote. So confusion, voter confusion is a myth with ranked choice voting. You will hear people say it's going to be too confusing to voters. We would be concerned if that were true. But 20 years of ranked choice voting being used in this country, all over the country, has clearly demonstrated it is not a problem. Voters understand how to say, what's your first choice? And if you can't have your first choice, what's your second choice?
Yeah, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa, but I believe in one of the testimonies that we heard during the Relation and Tribals Committee, we had an auditor from Utah, I believe, come in and talk about that exact question of, well, you're going to have to hire, like the fear of spending money on hiring somebody whose whole job is to educate voters. And she was very flat out like, that didn't happen. We did not need to hire anybody, because just what Lisa said, the candidates are the ones doing the work that I think we should already be doing, which is educating people on how to vote and where to go and the most successful ways to do it. So yeah, they didn't even need to hire anybody to like go over that, because people understood it.
That's fantastic that it won't be too confusing for people to learn about. Do you think, how could ranked choice voting affect voter turnout?
We have evidence about that too. Yeah. It's associated with a roughly 10% increase in voter turnout everywhere it's been used. So voters get it that their voice matters more, that they don't have to worry about wasting their vote by voting for a candidate they like best, but who doesn't have who might be a spoiler and so on. Voters have a stronger voice in ranked choice elections, and they are incentivized to vote more.
Mm-hmm.
Feel free to jump in. Erin, did you have anything more you wanted to say on that
Oh,
one?
No, I just completely agree with you. I think it goes back to creating passion behind voting again.
Yeah.
And once people know that, oh God, I mean, the last couple of presidential elections with the amount of people running in primaries, I just heard it all over the board, no matter what party you're associated with, of I really want to vote for my person that I want, but I know I'm throwing away my vote. And so sometimes people don't even go out and vote, and this eliminates that. And I think more people will be excited and like want to have their voices heard, and yeah, will show up to do it.
And ranked choice voting encourages more candidates to run. We see, again, a very strong research finding that's very solid, is that more women and more people of color run and win in ranked choice elections. That means voters have more choices on the ballot. Think about it. Here in Washington state, we have a top two system. That means there's just two candidates in the general election for any race. Sometimes there's just one, but two is the most. Two is not a lot of choices. And ranked choice brings more choices, and that encourages more people to be interested in the elections and encourages more turnout.
Mm-hmm. And before we go to the next question, I believe all of us want to keep answering questions, but just wanted to acknowledge that the assigned time of the presentation, if you are here for credit, has passed. So if you do wish to head out, feel free. But if you wish to stay and ask questions or listen to questions, please do, because we're going to be sticking around to answer a couple more.
Yeah, I guess just to add on as people kind of walk out the back door here. Yeah, it's the democratization of democracy again, like Lisa said, right? More people run less. It costs less money to run for office. It means the people in the community can actually make change in their own community, right? For the most part, people in the community know how to fix their own community. At least they know what problems there are. And it at least gives them more power. It means gives all of us a little more power.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a question that I did not see earlier, but it's pretty interesting. Suppose you have a race with 30 candidates. How many would you have to rank? Would it be hard to rank all 30?
It's a great question. I'm not sure if I know the right way to speak about this, if somebody else wants to take it.
You never have to rank candidates in a ranked choice election in this country. If you lived in Australia, you actually do have to rank them all. But here in the US, you never have to rank, so you can always just vote for one if you want. Typically, ballots will allow voters to rank between 5 and 10 candidates, so you would never see ranking all 30 be an actual option. We did have 36 candidates for governor in our race this last August in the primary here in Washington state. And typically you would see voters being offered a chance to rank between 5 and 10. And we would aim, we haven't implemented ranked choice voting here in Washington yet, so we don't know exactly how many rankings voters would have here in the state, but we would hope it would be about 10.
And what are the next steps for the ranked choice voting bill here in Washington state?
Yeah, so next steps are our legislative team is going to keep on meeting. I'm not sure if we're still currently we're doing a legislative briefing every Wednesday from 6 to 6:15 if you just want to attend and learn more and learn how to get involved. I don't know if we're still going to be continuing that, Lisa. Will we still be doing that weekly?
A lot of our focus is going to shift to, in fact, I'm happy to make an announcement here to some of the there are a couple of counties, a few counties in our state that do have the authority right now, a few charter counties to implement ranked choice voting just for the county elections. It's sort of a loophole in state law that they can do it without the local options bill. Basically nowhere else can. So we're going to be working in King County and San Juan County to do that because those counties have the authority. We're also going to be just continuing to build the support we need to really push that local options bill all the way through over the finish line next session. So, and that is just an amazing amount of local grassroots work. It starts with signing up yourself, talking to your friends, asking your friends, family, neighbors, coworkers, workers, relatives, every folks you know, have they heard of ranked choice voting? Tell them that you know, tell them what if they don't know, if they haven't heard about it, talk to them about it. It's a lot of education, connecting with local groups that you're part of. If you're part of a church or a community group or a political group or just a book club, bringing to your group, again, this idea so that folks learn about it. The biggest obstacle to implementing ranked choice voting in our state is that many people still haven't heard of it, just don't know about it. So that's outreach, educational work, just like a presentation like this. And we so appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. But all of you can take action in that local way. And chapter groups that meet locally, we have groups all over the state. We don't actually have one right now in Pullman, although perhaps still on this call is Helen, who has been helping to move that forward. And I hope that coming out of this presentation, we may actually have a kind of a nucleus of interest in moving this reform forward locally in the Pullman area. So
yeah,
lots to do.
In relation to the bill specifically too, we will continue. So some of the outreach we've been doing right now with the bill specifically is phone banking. And if you've done it before, sometimes it seems a little like scary to just call people, but we actually call supporters. We call people who have openly said that they support Fairvote Washington. And it's one of my favorite phone banks I've ever done because we have a team that really makes the action that we ask our supporters to do can be done in like 2 minutes. And we walk them through it on the phone, and you literally get to hear the other person on the line be like, oh my God, this is so easy. And you're like, yeah, I know. And so you can help us by doing that. We've made hundreds of calls, but we have really nice, easy sessions, and we do it all together on Zoom where we get together as a group and we mute ourselves and we're all chatting on the phone to like other people, and we'll put in the chat like interesting things that we've heard or things that we're learning or people's questions. And it kind of feels like you're almost in a room together, which is really nice, especially during COVID. So we've been doing phone banking. We send out emails to senators and legislators and representatives. And so, yeah, these next 10 months, we're going to be continuing to focus on getting people to write to their representatives and senators and ask for the support so that when we go back into the session, we can continue to move this bill forward. So yeah, I again cannot speak to how many groups I've been involved with that do community grassroots organization, and this is one of the most organized ones I've ever been a part of. Again, I'm biased a minute, but the people who create our scripts and the action items, it's bite-sized pieces that make a huge impact on getting stuff done. So that's what we're going to be doing specifically for the bill.
You know, even though there's not a local Pullman area chapter right now, people can join any of our chapter meetings anywhere all over the state because they're all happening on Zoom. So go to our website events calendar, like Aaron was telling you, and you are all welcome to any of our events. Just come on in, and we're real friendly. It's super easy to get connected with Fairvote Washington and all kinds of different things to do. Aaron's gotten involved with the legislative team. Alejandro took the initiative to start a Pierce County chapter. He's the chapter lead now for a brand new organizing group there. And there are just so many other ways to get involved, small and large.
All right, well, that seems to be all of our questions for this evening. So I want to thank all of you on behalf of Issues and Forums, to our viewers for being here tonight, and to the folks from Fairvote Washington for giving us this awesome presentation on how we can give voters a real choice. If you'd like to follow Issues and Forums on Twitter, our @ is ASWSU Issues. We're also on Facebook as ASWSU Issues and Forums, and our chair's email is rhys.chapman@wsu.edu. And it is in the chat if you need to look over any of the information again. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much for having us. I think Alejandra and I had we love talking about this stuff.
Yeah, I want to change the world too, you know, so let's make it happen. That's how I feel. So
Thanks for coming out tonight, everybody.
Mhm.